Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you back, or for the first time, to We'll Bring the Popcorn, your favorite film and TV podcast. So let's talk about 28 years later, this. We're transitioning from LAO into 28 years later.
Very different.
Or as the internet likes to call it, 28 inches later.
But yeah.
Take that as you will. But this is one we have been waiting for since it was announced. It's been 23 years since 28 Days Later, so they've added 5 extra years to keep with their naming scheme here. But this is Danny Boyle following up on this story that they started. 28 Weeks Later was about 18 years ago, but it's pretty much ignored for this film. It takes some elements of how they filmed it, because Danny Boyle didn't do the second one. It's a completely singular story set outside of 28 Years Later. Doesn't continue. Cillian Murphy's Jim's character, he's nowhere to be seen in that. It continues basically from 28 Days Later, that now it's been 28 years that we've got the infected are still running wild. The UK has been quarantined away from the rest of the world. The rest of the world is seemingly living life like normal, but the entirety of the UK, you've got boats patrolling. You don't have anybody allowed to do any rescue missions. So if there's anybody who gets stranded or ends up in the UK, it's like, hey, you're there. That's it. No one's coming from you. So 28 Years Later does start off with probably one of the, to me, horrifying things that they've ever done, and that's showing a bunch of kids watching Teletubbies.
Yep.
I have said it over and over again. The baby in the sun of Teletubbies is the most horrifying thing I have ever seen in my life. So I think the baby started the infection.
I wouldn't doubt it.
It's all tied together now. Teletubbies started 28 Days Later.
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
But it's kind of funny that you get that. It's a very British kids show, and you start off going back to the infection and showing the kids are sitting in a room watching Teletubbies. You get the freaky little baby in the sun, which always gets. I say that Teletubbies is a horror film, a horror series to me because of that. It's so weird and strange and all that. It just drives me nuts. But it doesn't waste any time getting into the blood and the gore or anything else. And this is a very violent, gory, heavy, bloody film that I really enjoyed. I think that for being so long from doing 28 Days Later, being 23 years since they've done it, they filmed it all on iPhones using different rigs and stuff. Yep. I feel like it still had quite a lot of that charm, that low budget, gritty, darker, like they have a bigger budget now than they ever did. Yeah. But story wise, cinematography wise, how it looked, like it just felt like it fit so well into this universe after so long.
Yeah, it felt like it had the same aesthetic as the previous films too, which helps with the continuity, right? So if you're telling a similar type story in a similar setting, like you want that aesthetic to remain about the same. But I want to talk about, the main characters in this film. So you have, the dad, Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. You have the son, Spike, who's played by Alfie Williams. And you have the mom.
So fantastic.
I have opinions about the kid. So we'll go with Jodie Comer as Isla. I'm not going to lie. I could not stand that kid. I don't know why.
Wow.
That kid got on my freaking nerves in this film. He kind of came across as a little bit of a whiny type kid who just...
I get that, yeah.
He came off as like this bullheaded... Like, I get it. Like, the whole thing with his dad, like, and how he treated his mom, I get that. But just a full-on bullheadedness of, like, I have to get my sick mom to this doctor that everybody thinks is a quack, and I'm willing to just endanger myself and everyone else to get her there just to see if he could possibly save her and, have figure out what's going on with her. Like, I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way, but that's not to say this movie, I love this movie. Like, this movie is really, really good. It's just that kid just grated on me. I don't know why.
I'm kind of surprised, but I have a 12-year-old, so I'm kind of right in there because he's supposed to be 12 in the movie. Yeah. And so I'm kind of right in that. Well, I was like, okay, I can see and I can get what this kid is. So being a dad kind of helped me see the kid in a different way, because I can see a kid at that age acting that way.
Well, sure, and he got on my nerves. But he did a fine job as that type of role, right? It's just, if that's the goal of the kid, the job well done, right? It's just the kid just got on my. I kind of wanted to see the kid get bit at some point. But that's neither here nor there.
Write all your hate mail to.
Hey, bring it on. I hate kids. There you go. That'll tell the story. Obviously, I don't. But yeah, like you have obviously the mom who is sick. You have the dad who's very much about the traditions of, this neighborhood where, they don't go to the mainland very often, and, they kind of keep it communal and keep it to this, secluded space that's protected from, the infected, that have, the high walls and the lookouts, and it feels very protected, that he's very much in the traditions of that. And the kids, just trying to figure out what's going on with his mom. He wants to kill zombies. He wants to go to the mainland and prove his worth. And, they kind of venture out and do that. And he gets a wake up call very quick on his first time out there. And, I love the grittiness that this film has. Like, they do such a good job of making these infected feel like the threats that they really are, because they're not your traditional zombies. This really kicked off the whole don't have to be slow, mindless zombies walking around, where these are very much more of a threat because they are adaptable. They're a little smarter. They run. They're fast. Like, they're a real legitimate threat, and it kept that very heavy throughout this film of how much of a threat these infected are. And that's not even going into the alpha character, which the internet just has absolutely loved for one reason or another. If you've seen the film, you know what we're talking about. They call him an alpha for a reason. But it had a lot of that dark grittiness to those infected, and I kept that story grounded enough that it feels like it was seamless from the first film into this one. And I know you kind of talked a little bit about them retconning 28 Weeks Later, not really taking from that, but they kept a lot of that same aesthetic from the first film that I really, really enjoyed, and kept it in this film too.
Yeah, I think some ways that they filmed 28 Weeks Later, I think Danny used that, but yeah, story-wise, this is kind of acting like it never happened, because in 28 Weeks Later, they kind of set up within a month or two, the infected kind of died out if they didn't have a food source, anything else. And this one, it's been 28 years. They've still thriving and still out there, to the point that we have alphas. You have infected that are smarter, that can be a little calmer, but when they go into their rage mode, they go into full rage mode. And that's where you get some of the most graphic, crazy violence, because alpha just pull stuff apart with his bare hands, and it's wild and crazy. But it's also one point that I could give it a little bit of a knock, is because it almost became video game like, that the alpha can take much more damage than the other. So I think the dad says something like, took like 28 arrows to take one down before. Like, that becomes a little almost too cartoony with it, that okay, yeah, you get that we can take out all these others with one shot to the neck or the head or the heart, but the alpha could take 28 arrows. Like, that's getting a little video gamey, and a little video gamey too, because I'm curious why he went with this stylization when they do the kills, because it gets to this like very fast paced but slow-mo like kills for the headshots and everything else. Like, it becomes jarring to that, and it was like a little strange to me that he decided to do that. Like,
it felt very intentional.
It was very intentional, but it was like, why are we kind of video gaming the kills and stuff in it? Because we didn't do that in 28 days. You didn't do that in 28 weeks. So it's something new he decided to add, that I could see some problems with, or people having problems with that, because it does, it's scary and frightening, and then you get the kill, and it's like, like really quick, odd kind of kills. Like, that's the two main nitpicks I could have with this, is the alphas are a little too overpowered, and the kind of the strangeness of it. It's a very quirky film. They've always been kind of strange and quirky with how they do. So I do think this is the most terrifying that the infected have been, because he amped up the sound of them, but just the quick cuts of their attacks and stuff just made them a little more terrifying. You had some more slow-mo, but you also had them because you couldn't hear them dragging themselves across the ground. You're like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. I think they did such a great job of setting tension and just keeping on the edge of your seat at times. The story is kind of split into two different stories here. It's all the same, and you can even go back to 28 Days Later, that it basically tells two different stories, because the first part of 28 Days is Jem waking up in the hospital. Right. He journeys out. He ends up finding a couple people, and he's learning about what's happening with the infected and surviving, and they run into a dad and a daughter, and they're just on a journey of survival, and they're trying to, follow this radio message that's telling them to go to this place of survival. And once you get to that place, it kind of changes into a different movie because you're dealing with these military guys who want the women, and it's getting into a different, darker, and you kind of get this similar feel with this because the first 30% of the movie is about Alfie's character Spike and Aaron Taylor Johnson's Jamie going out. And normally they're 14, 15 years old before they venture out onto the mainland. But he's 12. His dad thinks he's ready. His dad's kind of the alpha of this island group. And so they venture out to hunt the infected. He's also showing them, well, this is where we get our wood. This is where we get stuff. So we have to come out here to get some things. And it's all about that journey and that connection with his dad and learning the dangers and everything else. And I can see where he can be a little bit annoying. As being a dad, I'm like, I see his struggles and how hot-headed and how quickly you can get with that stuff. But I think the actor did fantastic as it. But it's once they're done and they make it back in an exciting way, they make it back, it turns because Spike sees, and doing a lot of spoilers with this as well, Spike sees his dad is cheating on his mom. Mom has been bedridden. She's forgetful. Jodie Comer, she's quickly just becoming one of those actresses. If her name is attached to a movie, you know she's going to be fantastic. And she was great as the mom. You don't get as much in that first part, but once Spike, sees that his dad is cheating on his mom, that he learned as his dad didn't want to talk about it. They see a fire burning. He tells them about this guy who was a doctor that has gone crazy. He lives out there by the fire. Well, Spike gets that in his head that, okay, well, now dad's running around a mom. He doesn't care about us. You have a really emotional scene between them two, which is basically the end of Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie, because you get Spike and his mom heading out. He sets a fire to a building so he can get out the guarded gate, which is a little bit, all right, they're all going to abandon. There's so many people in this island. They didn't need the guard of the gate to go put the fire out. You have a bunch of other people that could have done that.
Yep.
But
we wouldn't have a movie.
But he does that. Heads out into the wild with his mom to go find this doctor character's played by Ralph Fiennes, who, again, another just phenomenal actor and everything he does. But it definitely feels like quite a different movie in a way once he leaves out with his mom.
Yeah, there's definitely a tonal shift in this, and it's all about getting to this doctor who is kind of like his last-ditch effort to kind of find out what's going on with her. She's having these headaches, forgetful spells, she's bedridden, has brief moments of clarity where she's either super helpful in protecting Spike or, does something just crazy or phenomenal, right? There's some very jarring things, especially one scene in particular involving a pregnant zombie.
Oh, yeah.
That was very...
caught me way off guard.
Wild and crazy. And that's one to definitely have the internet talking as well. But, you meet up with this guy who was, from the outside world coming in, and his boat gets kind of stranded on the island, and he's like the only one left of his group, and he's kind of a jerk. But that's where you get that dynamic of how different life is for the rest of the world versus how life is in the UK, because he starts coming in talking about, I'm talking to this girl, and that was probably the funniest part about it, was like him showing this photo of his girlfriend who...
What's wrong with her face?
Has, a bunch of plastic surgery and stuff, and he doesn't understand any of it because he's not grown up in that kind of...
He didn't know what a cell phone is. He doesn't know what technology is.
Yeah, and, it's a really funny interaction between the two of them, but, it's very much on this journey to get his mom to the doctor to figure it out, and then you finally make your way to him, and just the absolutely insane setup that he's got, with the skull tower and everything like that. That's just absolutely insane. You get the heartbreaking news about what's really going on with his mom based on the diagnosis and everything, and a really harrowing scene in that about, just kind of making peace with, where you're at and, everything like that. It was kind of a heartbreaking scene really in the film, but eventually, Spike has to, break out on his own here, and he's, it's getting towards the end of the movie, and he starts getting chased by this horde of infected, and he comes across a brand new group that, oh boy,
this ending has been talked about more than anything with this film.
Yeah, so come to find out, now that the movie has been out, that we're getting a follow-up, the second film in this trilogy, very quickly. Like, they kind of kept it under wraps that they were shooting 2 films at once, because they shot a second film that's going to be the direct follow-up to this, that's coming out in January. So we're getting like a very quick turnaround on this. But he comes across this brand new group that
Jimmy's.
The Jimmy group, which, you know, they kind of allude to in the beginning of the film with one of the first things that he sees. But the leader of that group, come to find out, is the young boy that survived the initial attack at the beginning with the Teletubbies, right? So you have that kid is now grown, and, you know, he's leading this group of very weird, eccentric, tracksuit wearing people who fight the horde and are very, very sketch. But you meet Jimmy, who is played by the fantastic actor from Sinners, who kind of is really starting to break out here, and he's the leader of this group that, you know, helps essentially save Spike from a certain death at the hands of the infected. And now it looks like there could potentially be a partnership here between Spike and this new group that is going to be the emphasis in this next film. So very interested to see where this is going to go in the follow-up. Now, this was executive produced by Cillian Murphy. He does have kind of a hand in these. It's been rumored that he's going to have more of an involvement in this next film.
When Danny Boyle says he shows up at the end of the Bone Temple, but he's heavily involved with the third one.
So we'll finally get that bridge there. But what a way to end it, man.
That was such a strange... that kind of took me out a little bit. These have always been having a little bit of quirkiness with it, but you literally have a group of people, all named Jimmy, including women, all named Jimmy. They're in these bright tracksuits looking like Teletubbies, but the fight sequences was like watching the Power Rangers, which is, I guess, a little throwback to Spike had a little Power Ranger that he left, and then you had the Teletubbies reference in the beginning. But it was just such a... We had a movie that was very dark, emotional, heartfelt, gritty, and then you end with this such over-the-top... weird Teletubby Power Ranger type of quirkiness. Like, I get British humor. I love a lot of different British shows and things like that. But this was even just a little out there. Plus, it's also supposed to be paired to Jimmy Seville, who was a polarizing personality in the UK that is playing off of him as well. So there's some jokes and things you might not get if you're not fully, which I'm not, of exactly who he is. But it was just such a weird way to end the film, knowing that the next one picks up immediately. So we're ending on such a quirky, silly moment, and we're going to pick up with that quirky silliness to start the second one. So it was just the tone of the rest of the film compared to that last 3 minutes was insane. Night and day. Yeah. It was so strange. Very
opposite dynamics, and just very jarring way to end the film. You're just like, what the heck just happened? What did I just see? Like, it was kind of jarring. So
especially you're leaving, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but since you just left with Dr. Kelson, which you have this knowledge that he's taken all the bodies of anybody who's died and he's burning them and he's cleaning their bones and making pristine towers, and what he did for the mom, and with Eric, who was a soldier that was along with them, and what he's telling them about the bodies. So you've got this kind of, it's a little quirky, but it's a very dark thing. And you know, Spike brings the baby back to that baby that was born from infected. He brings it back to the compound that they live in, their island, but he leaves it with a note and he goes back on the wild. You've got this very heavy emotional weight that we've been going through for the last like 25 minutes, and then we get Teletubby Power Rangers. Like, it was so jarring.
It kind of left. I kind of awkwardly left the theater after watching it. Like, I didn't get it, honestly, but we'll see where they go with this next film. But I think we can kind of start talking about, you know, just overall how we felt about it. I really feel like they did a good job with the darkness and, you know, the style in which they shot the film. Fantastically done. It's got a lot of really dark, gritty effective horror elements built into this overall story. I'd jokingly kind of tongue in cheek said the kid annoyed the crap out of me, but it in a way that works for the character in the film, right? So it's like not knocking the actor in any way, shape, or form. It's just the kid drove me nuts. I wanted to, you know,
He acted off of pure
kid.
emotion.
Yeah, knock that. Yeah, no emotional control whatsoever. Like that, when you're in a situation like that, you'd figure he would have learned how to be a little bit calmer, I would say, like throughout it. But it is what it is. It's just a minor nitpick for me. But I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this, man. I really dug the movie.
28 Years Later was one that we've been waiting for a while, and I think it lived up to those expectations. It was dark, gritty, violent, emotional. It had some good acting, even though some of it was strange and quirky. But it really brought me back to that enjoyment that I had from 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. I didn't watch those again before I saw this. I watched them afterwards, and it feels like it fit perfectly in. After 23 years, they were still able to create something that had the same look and feel, other than that ending that the others did, because we didn't really have that strange, quirky humor in the other two. And so to introduce it here, we'll see how that plays out for potentially the next two films. I'm giving it an 8.5. I really enjoyed this film. I think it was so well done. One of my favorite horror films of the year. It's right up there with Sinners for me. That it's just really well done. It had that kind of old school filming style to it, even though they filmed it on iPhone 15s and stuff. They tried to do some different things. It failed a little bit with the alphas being a little too overpowered, that weird humor at the end. But overall, I think it worked really well. Like, it's a solid 8.5 for me.
Yeah, I landed on an 8 for me. Some of the nitpicks I have will take it down just a couple pegs for me. Like I said, the kid being very annoying to me. I don't know why, it just wants to knock it down a little bit for me. And that jarring ending, like, really just didn't feel like it fit any of the aesthetic in the entire film to kind of end on that note. And I may feel a little bit differently about it when we see the next film and see the direction that it goes. It's either going to sway me back up to raising it up a little bit. I really enjoyed, like you said, the darkness, the grittiness of this film, the violence. Like, it felt very much keeping in line with what we've come to expect from this franchise so far, and it really didn't take it in a crazy different direction, didn't veer away. It kept a lot of what made those movies so good effective. I think 8's a really solid landing spot for me. Like, it's not a perfect film by any means. Some of the cut scenes were a little overdone with the quick cuts, in my opinion.
A lot of quick cuts.
And it was a little bit overdone to where it was a little disorienting while watching it. So I want to knock it a little bit for that as well. But still, overall, a really, really solid horror film that I would put up there with one of the better ones done this year for sure. Like, it's spots where it's legitimately terrifying and jarring.
Absolutely.
To watch and see. And it makes you a little bit uncomfortable where you're kind of shifting around in your seats a little bit, which I enjoy when I'm going to see it. Like, I want to be uncomfortable in a horror movie. Like, I get enjoyment from that, and it's very effective at doing that. So props off, props to them for making a really, really solid horror film that I hope they can follow up on with with the Boneyard here that we're going to get, in January. I'm excited to see how they follow up with it. They're picking up right where we left off on this very, very, very weird note that really just was so jarring that it kind of aggravated me a little bit. I'm like, this is how we're ending it. Like, I don't think it has the same intrigue as I hope they were wanting from it to be at the end, but we'll see how they follow up. I hope I change my mind on it, but I think 8's very solid.
Yeah, we had to see if there's a payoff for this cult that we just got introduced, because we kind of heard that Jack O'Connell was going to be in it, and he's going to play this crazy church cult leader, but we didn't really see. We just got Teletubby Power Rangers at the end. Like, it was a very strange way, and we'll see if there is a payoff, because his father warned Spike that there are other people out there who are surviving in the quarantine zone and stuff, but we go very night and day between what we've kind of dealt with. So we'll see if the Bone Temple has a good payoff for this crazy cult or not, or if it's just wacky and quirky, and if it gives us anything really solid, because we don't really know what to expect for the Bone Temple now, because Spike's on his own. He's met up with this crazy cult. Where do we go for the second one? We don't really know.
Yeah, and we'll have to wait and find out for sure. But 28 years later is in theaters now. Go check it out. It's a really fun horror film. And by fun, I mean absolutely terrifying and weird and quirky and a lot of the things you want to see in a horror film. We're giving it a lot of praise here, despite the nitpicky things that we have about it. But go check it out. If you've seen it, let us know what you think about it. Do you think it holds up to what we've expected from 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later? Come let us know in our Discord. Come talk to us. Let us know in the comments of the video if you're watching this. Let us know what you think about it. We'd love to have that discussion with you for sure. To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.